much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, let's disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. Protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, let's disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. Protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. From heaven, there's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, let's disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you, disturb the peace. With John and Man, too cool. Disturb the peace. Protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Let's disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace. I'm a protector on a mission from heaven. There's too much at stake to be quiet. Let's disturb the peace. Me and you. Disturb the peace. We're trying to match your cool. Disturb the peace.
Welcome to Disturbing the Peace. I'm your host, John Amanchukwu, coming to you live from Y-Refi Studios. Today on the show, we will talk about Divided We Fall. I'm going to bring on William Wolf to talk about the state of the church, and then Josh Hammer is going to talk about the state of the union. You don't want to miss it. all here on Disturbing the Peace. Christianity in America is at a crossroads. I hope you can see that. I pray that the bride of Christ really understands what that means. You see, church attendance is declining, cultural pressure is intensifying, religious liberty battles are escalating, and the next generation is asking hard questions, and they should. At the same time, believers are rethinking how faith should shape public life, from education and parental rights to political engagement and institutional influence. The question is not whether Christianity still matters in America. The question is what kind of presence it will have in the decades ahead. Joining us now is William Wolf, founder of the Center for Baptist Leadership and a leading voice on Christianity, culture, and public policy. William, how's it going?
Good. It's great to be here with you today, John. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, it's an honor to have you on the show. I want to read this passage of scripture to you and get your interpretation on it. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he would hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon."
Yeah, brother, that's a very important passage, particularly for what we're dealing with in our nation today. We see these divided loyalties amongst even many of those who profess the Christian faith. What's happened here, I would say, particularly on the left side of the American political divide, though it can happen on the right too, is that American Christians are making politics their primary master. And then they're subverting basic Christian teachings, like teachings on marriage and teaching on protecting the unborn in the womb, teachings about how to have a good and healthy society, to their progressive political agenda. It can happen on the right too, but we're seeing it primarily on the left. And so I think what we need to see is a resurgence of Christians who put Christ first in all things in the church, but also in the public life as we defend this nation that God has blessed us with.
There's a message that's going around about you talking about immigration. I want to play that and get your take on it here on the show. I was actually impressed that you were willing to lean in to the extent that you did. It's amazing. Take a look at this.
Christians can and should oppose mass migration, support secure borders, support mass deportations and denaturalization and remigration, because God is a God of order, not chaos. God is a God of justice, not anarchy. And God is a God of righteousness. And that's really what it comes down to when I think about this. This really is a question of righteousness. It's a question of the difference between good and evil. Those who want to have open borders and flood our country with illegal aliens are promoting something that is evil. And Christians who stand up and say, I love God and I would never mistreat an illegal alien, but it's time for them to go home, are on the side of what is good and right. So do not be confused and do not be cowed or intimidated by the loud voices on Facebook or Instagram, or maybe even some of your friends. I mean, I have them too. I see people I went to college with right now who graduated from the same Christian college I went to, saying like, ICE is the devil. Do not be intimidated by these people. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you are a true Bible-believing Christian right now, I think you have a moral obligation before God and before your fellow citizens to support and cheer for our brave men in immigrations and custom enforcement, in customs and border patrol, and to support Donald Trump as he seeks to save our country by removing the illegal invaders.
All right, so you're not supposed to speak in that manner. You're a Christian. Why would you go as far to say that we need to remove these criminal illegal aliens? What's going on here?
Well, I must have missed the memo that we're not supposed to speak biblical truth anymore, John, because this matters so greatly, and Christians are being so confused and brainwashed. The progressive left and even some conservative evangelical pastors cherry pick passages from the Old Testament about welcoming the sojourner and not mistreating the alien among you, which that is important. That is good. Nobody should mistreat an illegal alien, as I said. But the reality is if you don't support borders, and if you don't support removing people who have broken the law to enter our nation, you are an anarchist. You are lawless. And John, you and I both know this. Our God is a God of order and not chaos, as I said. Our God is the great lawgiver. God cares about righteous laws being justly upheld. And in Romans 13, we learn that the Christian's responsibility and its posture towards the governing authorities should be to submit as much as we are able to, as long as the governing authorities are not commanding us to sin or to partake in injustice. And again, removing illegal aliens who should not be here is a just exercise of the authority God has given the government. So I'm actually making the case in that full talk there that Christians should not only submit to the governing authorities as we see them removing illegal aliens, we should be supportive of it. We should pray for it. We should cheer it. This is why Romans 13, 1-7 says that the government does not bear the sword in vain.
Did you receive any pushback from this message?
I've received some online, but I will say that in the audience they were incredibly receptive. And in fact, one of the sweetest interactions I had was this wonderful older lady who said, I am made to feel like such a bad person for wanting to see the illegals deported. So thank you for giving me the ability to defend this.
Have you noticed that some Baptist churches don't want to invite you, or they write you off as being polarizing or trivial?
Well, sure, that's certainly the case. With Center for Baptist Leadership, our mission is to reform the Southern Baptist Convention and to embolden them to speak courageously in the public square. We're kind of like a House Freedom Caucus for the Southern Baptist Convention. And yes, that ruffles a lot of feathers because, as you know, John, there are many men in leadership across multiple denominations in American evangelical Christianity who want to go along and get along, who want to have nice things said about them in the secular news media, Washington Post, New York Times, and they don't want to be seen as associating with Donald Trump at all. I have my own criticisms of Donald Trump, but when it comes to an issue like this, he's doing the exact right thing that God has appointed him for at this time.
So what's happening in the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention? Why are they taking a more liberal stand on these issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Southern Baptist Convention, America's largest Protestant denomination, has not been immune to the left's long march through the institutions. What the cultural Marxists set out to do in terms of conquering cultural centers of power and influence in our nation, the universities, the corporate boards, and the churches. The same things happened to the SBC. Over the last 10 years, we've had a slew of major leaders who have compromised on things like critical race theory, radical climate change activism, and on immigration in particular, partnering with people like the George Soros-funded Evangelical Immigration Group to tell churches that we should promote things like amnesty instead of mass deportations. And so the left intentionally targeted SBC. Megan Basham, a mutual friend of ours, has done great work exposing this in her book, Shepherds for Sale. Everyone needs to buy and read that. But essentially, we're coming along and saying the left's long march needs to stop, and it's time for them to go find homes in more liberal, woke, or progressive denominations. But we as Baptists believe the Bible, and we're going to stand on it.
So how are congregants responding to this? What are they saying? Are they stuck in the middle? Are they picking a side? We're seeing this all across the body of Christ. All right. You have your more liberal brand and more conservative brand of the Baptist movement. You have your more liberal and conservative brand of the Pentecostal movement. You have your more conservative and liberal brand of the Presbyterian Church. What are you hearing within the SBC, and what is it going to take to right the ship?
Yeah, so I would say that we have had a wonderful and warm reception from your average member, the people in the pews, or as sometimes they're referred to by a great leader of the original conservative resurgence in the Southern Baptist Convention, Billy Baptist and his Bible. But there is that divide between the conservative laity and the more liberal leadership that has matriculated over the last decade. So fundamentally, I mean, it's in our name. What's it going to take to fix this? We need courageous, uncompromising, biblical Baptist leadership in the Southern Baptist Convention for the 21st century, because at the end of the day, it's going to take a change in leadership to affect a change in direction.
Is there any current policy or legislation that you're working on right now to make sure that that takes place?
Well, yeah, so we support all sorts of, positive policy and legislation in the public square. The main action item for Southern Baptists right now in particular is to come to our annual meeting in Orlando this June 10th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, and come vote for Pastor Willie Rice. Willie Rice is a conservative pastor in Florida who's running on a platform of reform, small r reform, not reform theology per se, but reform in the Southern Baptist Convention to bring us back to our biblical roots and courageous engagement with culture and politics. So if you're listening to this and you're a Southern Baptist, we need you in June, this Orlando, to elect Willie Rice as our next president.
What role should churches play in the debate over education, parental rights, and gender ideology?
Oh, man, that's such an important question, John. Well, we know from the Bible in Deuteronomy that parents are supposed to train their children to know and love the Lord. I've written about this extensively. The idea that parental rights over education, and particularly over things like major questions, gender questions, those belong to parents and not to government schools. And so I think that, look, we could have a debate about whether you put your kids in public school or private school or Christian school or homeschool, but whatever you do, you are tasked by the Lord to oversee the quality and the content of your children's education, and you cannot outsource that to the state blindly. As our good friend Vodi Bakum used to say, you cannot be surprised if you send your kids to be educated by Caesar and they come home as Romans. We need to train up the next generation to be Christians, and that begins in the home.
So are you saying that parents are responsible for what school systems they put their kids in?
I know that sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true. And I mean, one of the things that's really important to remember here is when you pull the camera back on the history of public education in the United States of America, it was initially and fundamentally a Christian project. But what happened was it was hijacked in the 20th century, as so many things were, by radical atheists, by Darwinians, by people who did not believe in the Bible and did not want children to know the Bible. And so now, instead of going and getting quality education and even Christian education in the public schools, in so many places, when you send your kids to public schools, they're being brainwashed to do three main things: hate God, hate their family, and hate their country. And so, yes, parents have to be responsible and be on guard to make sure that that's not happening to their kids, because at the end of the day, God's not just going to hold teachers and principals responsible. He's going to hold parents responsible for their children's education.
What do you think about the label of Christian nationalism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a label that you shouldn't shy away from, because at the end of the day, if you believe that this is one nation under God, that it was founded by brave Christian pilgrims and pioneers and settlers, and that their Christian morality that undergirded and informed our Declaration of Independence and our constitutions and our state constitutions and the formation of the greatest nation on earth, and you want to see that continue, you're going to be called a Christian nationalist. If you believe that little boys can't become little girls, you're going to be called a Christian nationalist. If you think it's a good thing that President Trump is trying to encourage and promote the return of faith in America, even from the White House, you're going to be called a Christian nationalist. Now, sometimes there are going to be things associated with Christian nationalism that Christians should reject. And if you have to have those defining conversations, you should have them. But we shouldn't let the left use scare words to cower and intimidate us from speaking truth in the public square.
There are many Black liberals, I hear it all the time, who say that the framework of Christian nationalism is nothing more than just white nationalism. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a pretty funny and ultimately baseless charge. One of the things that's really interesting about this conversation is if you go back to one of the most popular books published against Christian nationalism, it's called Taking America Back for God by Samuel Perry and Andrew Whitehead. In the surveys that they did to try to get a read on whether or not Christians were Christian nationalists or not, the surveys that they got back from the black churches actually scored higher in support of the ideas of Christian nationalism than they got back from the white churches. So I think that really is just, again, another sort of a liberal race baiting canard from the left to try to divide Americans, not only by faith, but also by race.
You mentioned earlier that there was at one point an insurgency of critical race theory within your denomination. Why do you think so? Is there a complex, maybe a white savior complex that some people adopt as a means of mending the brokenness of the past? Do you think that some of these people who find themselves duped by these woke ideologies, that they mean well, but they're using the wrong framework?
I think that's exactly what's going on. I mean, look, with the Southern Baptist Convention, nobody denies our historical roots and foundation. The Southern Baptist Convention was started in many ways in order to ensure that missionaries could be sent from churches in the South who also were slaveholders. That's evil. That's wrong. We've repented of that multiple times, and nobody denies that. We're also 150 years away from that. And yet in the sort of the rise of peak woke in the 2010s, we saw a lot of Southern Baptist leaders sort of re-inhabiting a posture of white guilt. And as you said, maybe even a white savior. I mean, there are these crazy videos, John, of a prominent Southern Baptist Convention seminary president saying that his job as a white Christian is just to sit and listen and learn when minorities are speaking, and that we need to give minorities more positions of power. And yet I will note that he did not do that. He's still the president. He did not resign and give his position to a minority. So it really is, it's white guilt for me, and it's DEI for everybody else except for me, which is quite frankly just hypocrisy.
I mean, who would say that? I mean, what kind of leader would go as far as to make that argument, but know that they're not going to lose their position? I mean, what was he trying to accomplish?
I think it's pandering, quite frankly. I mean, I think also, as people like Thomas Sowell and others have talked about, it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. The idea that, you know, a minority Christian could not matriculate to a position of influence or leadership in a conservative Christian seminary denomination without the white savior handing it to them is its own form of weird reverse racism. And it is, as you pointed out, it's the people who never are at threat of losing their positions who argue for those policies.
You know, I oftentimes have a perfect, I wouldn't say hatred, but disdain towards people who let me know that they experience white guilt. I think it's condescending, to be honest, because if a white person has to feel guilty because God made them white, then I should feel ashamed because God made me black.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a travesty. You run into the true hearts of some people out there when they go down that rabbit hole of white guilt. Man, I wouldn't trade being a black man in America for anything. You want to know why? Because that's my lot. God so willed it to be that he made me black. And I don't use that as a position where I'm now, I view myself as inferior towards anyone, or I need a special handout or support or anything of that nature. I don't, you know, and so whenever I come in contact with white people who have white guilt, I immediately remove them from my friend list, because they're going to have a relationship with me that is not true or genuine. It's more so that they feel sorry for me. And listen, I'm 6'4", nearly 245 to 50 pounds. I'm too big and black to be anyone's victim, you know, William. And so my mindset towards this is, I think now more than ever, we need to get to the heart of these woke ideologies and see why they are taking place. And by and large, it's happening because strategically through the Democrat Party, there's a willingness to keep a certain group of people in a position where they are low information voters. But all of that starts also by trying to make sure that these same people are low information thinkers. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that white guilt is one of the most pernicious and deadly and destructive forces in Western civilization today, because it's not just about race relations in the United States of America. White guilt is what has fueled all of our European allies to open their borders to hordes of Muslim refugees and invaders who have no intention of assimilating and in fact want to conquer them. White guilt is what inspired the progressive Democrats to open the border and flood the United States of America with tens of millions of immigrants, not black. And in fact, those illegal immigrants often impact and hurt black communities in America just as much as they impact and hurt white communities as well. If we do not put a stake in the heart of white guilt and anti-Christian hatred that dominates our discourse and our current trajectory of Western civilization, we will fall, and what will rise will not be some beautiful, perfect DEI utopia, but it will be this disastrous dystopian hellscape where, quite frankly, the civilizational jihad of Islam will rule over the wokesters instead. So it is a civilizational threat right now, exactly as you said. And my favorite verse on this is really just James 2:1. Brothers, show no partiality as you hold the faith of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. No partiality, not to minorities, not to whites, not to anybody else. Just hold the faith.
You know, there's something that matters more than like color. It's being like faith or like-minded. Like-mindedness is important. I'm going to show you this next video clip of Nick Shirley, and you're going to see what happens when people are not like-minded. Take a look at this.
Now you have all these Islam men yelling Allah Akbar. I have a question for you guys. If America were to get in a war with a country like Iraq, who would you guys defend, America or Iraq?
We won't get a war. That's not permissible for us. But at the same time,
Who would you defend first?
We would support our brothers in Iraq. That's the only way.
So you wouldn't defend America?
We would not defend America.
But you're American.
But at the same time, listen. At the same time, America is our country because we were born here. But in our Islamic book, we're not allowed to fight with people that are against our religion. So we just take up the jail time.
So you would
That's
not.
what we do.
So you would not defend America.
I would go to jail instead of fighting for America.
And who would you defend if we were to go to war against a country like Iraq again, America or Iraq?
America.
And should that be a troublesome conflict of interest for somebody to be here in America that would rather support another nation like Iraq?
Anybody who supports another nation needs to live in that nation. This is a Christian nation. A lot of the Constitution is based off of the Bible. And how far the country has fallen.
William, what do you think? What say you?
Yeah, well, I think the warnings of a former president of ours, Teddy Roosevelt, has come to pass. He said that there was no place in the United States of America for a hyphenated American. He wasn't being anti-immigrant. He was speaking at a time when there had been a surge in immigration to the United States of America. But at the same time, he was saying that if you come here, regardless of your background or your former commitments, you need to assimilate into America, adopt our beliefs, our values, our customs, even our religion, if you will, and defend this new country as your home. It was a very important warning then, and it's even more true now. If your first and most primary commitment is not to the United States of America, then you should go live in the country where that is. There are hundreds of other countries on this planet. You can live there and not here, but we do not need subversive traitors and foreign agents taking advantage of our generosity on American soil.
Listen, my friends, that's a mic drop moment right there. William Wolf, thank you so much for joining the show. Listen, I'm gonna have you back on. I enjoyed talking to you. I followed your work for a little while. Continue to preach the truth and don't take anything back, my friend.
Amen. Thank you for having me.
Well, everyone, listen, we have to talk about the debt crisis in America, especially amongst students. Student loan debt is over $300 billion. That's $1 billion. That's a lot of money. And $45 billion of that is labeled as distressed. So let's face it, if you have distressed or defaulted private student loans, nobody is coming to bail you out, and bankruptcy is not an option. But you can take charge of your situation by contacting YRefy. There's hope for you, my friend. Can you imagine being debt-free and not living under this burden anymore? Just think about it. The first step is contacting YRefy. If you go to yrefy.com, you can read testimonials from other people who have been where you are and how they've escaped. You can even see what their monthly payments were versus what they are now. YRefy offers a 3-minute rate check without any credit impact. Just think about all the time you spend scrolling on your phone day after day after day. Some people spend 3 to 4 to even maybe 5 hours doing so. What would happen if you took those 3 minutes to get your freedom and your sense of mind back? Bad credit is accepted. And, if you have a co-borrower and you've defaulted, YRefy can get them released from the loan. You can give mom and dad a wonderful break. You can even skip a payment every 6 months up to 12 times without penalty. All you have to do is call 888-YRefy-85. That's 888-YRefy-85, or log on to yrefy.com. And now on Disturbing the Peace, I want to have a conversation with my guest, Josh Hammer. He's senior counsel at the Article 3 Project and Internet Accountability Project, and senior editor at large with Newsweek. But let me say this. The State of the Union made one thing unmistakable, my friends. The direction of our country is being recalibrated. There are people who want to see an end to Western civilization, in particular, America. There are people who hate our Constitution. They hate the fact that America was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. Now, I will probably receive hate mail for saying that. But let me post my email address for you to send it to me, because it's true. 55 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence believed that America was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. They believed that it was the God of the Bible that made this country great. I won't apologize for that. I want to bring on Josh Hammer to have a conversation with me about the State of the Union. Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me.
Wonderful. Josh, let's jump into this. What were your thoughts about President Trump's speech last night? Give me the good, bad, and the ugly.
I thought it was a home run. I thought that Donald Trump gave the best speech that he could have given. And he's facing some headwinds in the polling. His approval rating in some polls is high 40s into around 50%, but the Real Clear Politics polling average has him in the low 40s. Some mixed recent economic data there. So he had to deliver a strong speech, and I think he did that. I think it was one of the greatest speeches Donald Trump has ever given, and it is probably his greatest State of the Union address in particular there. He did pretty much all the things, John, that I called for him to do on my own show, The Josh Hammer Show. On the one hand, I said that Donald Trump has to paint his political opposition in stark terms as a bunch of raving lunatics. And I think that he very, very, very successfully did that. He got Democrats to not stand, for instance, to support the parents, the grieving parents of the slain Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska. He got Democrats somehow to not stand to support the most rudimentary basic proposition that their own government, the U.S. government, should stand to defend their own citizens, American citizens, over illegal aliens. That is the one clip that I think could pay dividends all the way through the midterm elections this November. He got into a verbal spat with Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, the John Lennon and Paul McCartney of the squad, two absolute lunatics, people who support America's enemies and who are on the wrong side of virtually every issue. So Donald Trump, I think, very successfully painted Democrats as crazy. It was also just a very deeply patriotic speech, a lot of rah-rah, let's fly the flag, red-blooded Americanism, red, white, and blue patriotism. I thought the whole thing with the U.S. hockey team was absolutely A+, fantastic. This rhetoric about the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration, it was a very, very effective speech. And he did a great job defending his administration, and he even announced a new health care plan, something that I've been waiting for Republicans to do personally and for a very, very long time now. The question is, can this translate into actual policy victories in this midterm year? That's the more difficult part of the equation, but certainly Donald Trump, I think, has done all that he possibly could have done to give his party some serious momentum, and they really need some momentum going towards November.
What are the winning policy issues that we should focus on as we approach the midterm elections?
So this election, like virtually every election in America, will primarily be contested on the economy. The economic issues still in the exit polls. So, for instance, this past November, you had the election in New York City. You had some statewide elections in New Jersey and Virginia. And the polls there and the exit polls showed a very similar tale, which is that the American people, above all, tell pollsters they care about inflation, affordability, cost of living, all of these various other economic issues. There are other issues certainly that are relevant as well. I think crime is a very important issue. Donald Trump has an amazing record, an amazing story to tell on the issue of crime, by the way, John. The homicide rate in America is actually currently the lowest it's been since the year 1900. Yes, literally during the William McKinley presidency. Homicide, violent crime has decreased in plenty of blue Democrat jurisdictions as well, such as Washington, D.C., Chicago, Philadelphia, major urban corridors like that. He has an amazing story to tell when it comes to illegal alien crime as well. There's been a 95% minimum, at times we might think it actually might even be higher, decrease in border crossings under this administration from the Biden administration. Border crossings have essentially stopped. The southern border is the most secure it's been, frankly, since we started keeping tabs on it in the entire history of actually having metrics and data on that topic there. So there are some unmitigated successes. I haven't even gone into foreign policy. The administration has had some amazing foreign policy successes, all the various peace deals they've orchestrated there. It's been a very successful, frankly, year plus of this administration there, but I would say try to keep the momentum going on the economic issue. Let's see what can happen in a possible reconciliation bill in Congress this year, direct tax relief, maybe some sort of healthcare legislation there. You can really kind of target people's paychecks, immediate tax relief, housing, cost of living, healthcare. These are the kind of things I think could probably pay the highest bang for your buck dividends this November.
What themes do you think resonated the most with everyday Americans?
I think that the everyday Americans saw a political party in the Democrats that simply is just out of touch, just completely out of touch. That is the number one starkest takeaway that I personally had from watching the speech last night. You had a party. I mean, we simply cannot emphasize this point enough. They literally did not, to a person, they did not get off their butts to stand for the notion that it is the duty of the United States government to support American citizens over illegal aliens. That is astounding. You can play these clips side by side. You can play that clip. I mean, here would be a great ad. You want some free advice, NRCC, NRSC? You want some free advice for the campaign trail? Do this. Play that clip side by side of last night with the Bill Clinton State of the Union address from 1995, where he talks about the imperative to deport all illegal aliens, not even just the quote-unquote criminal ones, but all of them there. There's some of these old clips of Harry Reid, the Democrat senator from Nevada, calling for the abolition of birthright citizenship. Play these clips side by side just to show how far the Democratic Party has moved on the issue of illegal immigration above all there. I think these are the things that the American people really are paying attention to. And I think above all, in addition to that, John, they see a president who has a visceral love of country. This is one of the reasons, above all, that the Democrats' years-long crusade, their years-long campaign to try to paint Donald Trump as a fascist, as a dictator, a Hitlerian figure, a Nazi, a this, that, there, it fails because in Donald Trump, people see someone, and you can love him, you can hate him, you can like his policies, you can dislike his policies, but what I think any fair-minded observer, emphasis on fair-minded, but any fair-minded observer should be able to say that when you see Donald Trump, you see someone who just loves his country. And that came out so clearly last night when he was talking to the hockey team, when he was talking about the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. So I think the median American sees someone who loves his country. They may not agree with all his policies. They probably at least agree with some. And on the other hand, they see a Democratic Party that is so far out to lunch that they no longer even purport to stand with American citizens over illegal alien invaders. It's a very, very, very powerful contrast.
For a long time in this country, we have incentivized the demise of life. I'm speaking of abortion. And if we can incentivize abortion, do you think we can incentivize the American nuclear family?
It's an extraordinarily important question. It's something that I've given a lot of thought to over the years myself. Look, I think that we should be doing all that we possibly can to try to incentivize marriage, trying to incentivize child formation. I'm generally supportive of pro-natalist type policies. I've actually been to Hungary a couple times in recent years. Hungary is one of those European countries that has structured their entire tax code, frankly, in a pro-family manner. Actually, if you have, I think it's 3 or 4 children hungry, you get essentially no tax. I think your mortgage canceled or something like that. It's some crazy positive incentives to basically expand your family there. So I'm all aboard this. I'm all aboard trying to structure the tax code and make it as incentivized as possible to try to get married at a younger age. A lot of this is cultural. We can't just say that economic incentives will change all this. A lot of it really frankly is cultural. I think a lot of the problem actually frankly is higher education, John. My mind oftentimes goes to higher education. I think that our higher ed woes are actually a huge part of the problem. If you think about what higher ed is right now, you're basically producing a bunch of ideologically besotted people who are going off to these woke madrasas these days. They're then graduating with a lot of oftentimes very stupid degrees that won't necessarily get them good jobs. They're oftentimes carrying tens and not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And they're not coming out of that in a particularly marriageable fashion because they haven't started earning a job. They're not earning income. They just wasted 4 years of life and majoring in something stupid. They're now carrying a ton of debt there. What young girl would see a young guy like that and say, I want to marry you? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What are your job prospects there? So I think a lot about this. I've long been on the opinion that far too many people in this country go to university, that there are too many universities, frankly, that operate, and even the ones that do operate offer the ability to study in far too many subjects, many of which are just utterly trivial and completely worthless, if not outright subversive and counterproductive there. So I think that the higher education part of this, and there's a lot of room for policymakers to get involved here, actually, a lot of room for public policy to get involved here. But that's a big part of the puzzle there. Certainly the economic incentives should be part of it as well. And then just trying to message to Zoomers, to Gen Z, to millennials in kind of just a more cultural fashion there. This is something that Jordan Peterson at his best has done, something that the late Charlie Kirk certainly was amazing at there. Just trying to communicate to young men, perhaps above all, to take control of their life, to see that girl, to ask her out on the date. If you don't like the way you look, eat better, go to the gym. You have agency, you have free will, you have freedom of action in this country. Take your life into your own hands there. So some sort of all of the above here, whether it's cultural incentives, whether it's higher education, tax code there. This is an extremely important question that you're getting at there, and it's a very difficult thing to get at, but I'm confident that if we put 2 and 2 together, we can at least start to make some inroads towards putting Humpty Dumpty back together again.
In this age of the manosphere, you see commentators and pundits, some on the left and some on the right, who produce, negative podcasts and or statements towards the nuclear family, getting married, women, and the likes. What's the message? Let's speak to men here. What's the message to build up men and to steer them in the right direction, especially men who are in the category of Gen Z?
Men are the builders. Men are the ones who are called upon to lead their family, and they've been called on to lead their family ever since biblical times. This is literally what it means to be a man. It's not what it means to be a man is to lead. What it means to be a man is to oversee a family, to pass on your values from one generation to the next. I mean, this is really kind of the highest calling that we have. The highest callings that we have in this life are to serve and to obey God and to follow his dictates and his commandments, and to form a family, and then to pass down our inheritance and our values and our customs and way of life from one generation to the next in this great unbroken link, this unbroken chain of transmission that's been going back thousands and thousands of years now. These are really the foremost things that we are called to do in this realm. There is literally nothing more important than that. You might think that your career is more important. You might think that getting drunk with friends is more fun, or going to a concert, or going clubbing, or this or that. I'm not saying that you can't have fun. Obviously, I'm not trying to sound like a neo-Puritan or anything like that. Far from it. But it's important to think about how you can and ought to live a life of purpose, a life of meaning, because we're not here in our very short lifespans. We're not here just to be a bunch of atoms flying through space-time, flying through wilderness, is trying to maximize fun and frivolity. We are fundamentally called upon to do much higher things there. After all, what would be the purpose, frankly, of any of this there, if we were just called to just decay and just to drink ourselves to death there? That's not a particularly optimistic view of life, is it?
Listen, I agree with you 100%. One of the things that I have grown to admire and oftentimes seek to observe is Jewish culture, and how the family is the bedrock of the prominence within the Jewish culture. That's something that oftentimes we don't see in society as a mainstay that's lauded and or praised. And so I long to ask you that question and to get your feedback. I do think that there's more that we can do from a national presence to make sure that those things are now placed in the category of being glorified. We should make men who are losers, who abandon their family, feel like losers. We shouldn't make them feel like kings who lead a castle and a harem. We should point these things out. I've seen the deleterious impact that broken homes and broken families can do to a community. From the 1890s to the 1950s, the Black marriage rate rivaled that of whites. But when Lyndon B. Johnson came along with the Great Society plan, he found a creative way to remove the Black man from the home and to replace him with a $300 to $400 check from the government. In comes the money from the government, out goes daddy. But there were other communities who were impacted as well, but they chose a different route. The families stayed together. We saw that with the Jewish culture, with the Jewish family in America. I think these things have to be talked about more, not less, but more. But we have to use the right voices to do it. Let me say this. There are a lot of people who are subverting the conservative movement today. They seek to tear it down. They're not trying to move forward the legacy of a Charlie Kirk. They could care less. There are people who are intentionally stoking flames to create division within the conservative movement. What do you have to say to these people?
Well, look, John, I spent a disproportionate amount of time on my own show, The Josh Hammer Show, calling out these very people. I actually have a new essay up at Front Page Magazine on Tucker Carlson. I had an essay on Megyn Kelly last month. I've been involved in a pretty public spat with Candace Owens for some months now. These people are civilizational arsonists. They are fifth column subversive actors that are willfully doing the aiding, the abetting, and the advancing of the agenda of America's civilizational enemies. Because fundamentally, as you correctly and astutely note, what they're actually trying to do here is to destroy the current iteration of the American right. They are trying to make the American right, the conservative movement, the MAGA coalition, the Republican Party coalition, they're trying to no longer make it an ecumenical biblical vehicle, as a vehicle that stands for transcendental eternal values, that stands for truth, justice, and the American way. They hate all that. How do I know? Because when you actually look carefully, they essentially say as much. There's a reason, for instance, that Tucker Carlson was doing comical, hilarious Soviet-style propaganda videos in the Moscow, Russia supermarket. How he's been giving these fluff interviews to the Emir of Qatar multiple times. I'm buying a home in Qatar. He was saying that we shouldn't go in and get Nicolas Maduro, the thuggish, brutish Marxist dictator in Venezuela, because Maduro is a hero of social conservatism. I mean, these people are literally doing our enemies' work for them there, and they seek to tear down the American right and replace it with something, I don't really know exactly what it is, but something that would look a lot less biblical, a lot more pagan, a lot more pro-Islam, more pro-Islamic, a lot more anti-Western there. And it's evil. I do take solace in the fact that these people are going to get their own comeuppance. I have very little doubt about that. So, for instance, Candace Owens is coming out with this new quote-unquote series about Erica Kirk, this grieving widow, Charlie Kirk's the late Charlie Kirk's wife. There's not much more that can be said about this, other than the fact that this quote-unquote investigative series exists, is living, enduring proof of the existence of evil in the world and the existence that the Satan, that the Satan is in fact operating here. I do take solace in the fact that in Exodus chapter 22, verses 21 to 23, God speaks with a pretty clear voice when it comes to what happens if you oppress a widow or an orphan. It's harsh. It's very, very harsh. And
Yes.
I'm not going to make an exact prediction, but I do think that these people are going to get the retribution ultimately that they deserve. The only question, John, frankly, is whether we correct-thinking people will allow them to take down the entire ship that is the American right, and by extension, the United States. To that, I say hell no. And I think that pretty much every fair-minded person out there says hell no as well.
So for people who are caught in the middle, some of the people that you brought up, for a long time, they were celebrated. We celebrated them. We lauded them for their efforts. But now there's some trepidation. There's a rift for the person who's in the middle and they don't know what to think. What do you have to say to them?
Look, there is one group, one faction that started this so-called civil war that's been raging. Now, the tragedy here, John, is that the number one person who did more than anyone to try to keep the MAGA movement unified was Charlie Kirk, and we're doing this, of course, now in Charlie Kirk's tragic absence. But these level of accusations, this notion, as Tucker Carlson has said, that Christian Zionists that he hates them more than anyone. He really said that. He said that to Nick Fuentes, the leading neo-Nazi of his generation. He said that he hates Christian Zionists more than anyone. I take him at his word. I'm a lawyer. I think words mean what they say. So I think that actually means that he hates Christian Zionists more than Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Trans Tifa, ISIS, Hamas, whatever, you name it there. That's a pretty serious charge, actually, because Christian Zionists, if you take the word at face value, it means that you are a Christian and a Zionist. What is a Zionist? A Zionist is someone who thinks that Israel has a right to exist. So you're talking literally about at least a plurality, arguably a majority of the current Republican Party voting base, a shockingly high percentage, frankly, of the American people themselves. So he's saying that he hates more than anyone a very, very high percentage of his own purported coalition and his own country. So you really just have to listen to what these people actually think and say carefully. And it's very easy to discern who is the faction here that is trying to tear it all down, and who is the faction that is actually trying to conserve and to preserve and transmit biblical truth from one generation to the next. Ultimately, we really don't have to make this more complicated than it has to be. You began our conversation by talking about correctly how this Constitution, and I'm a constitutional law scholar by background, that's my area of expertise, this Constitution was founded on biblical principles. Absolutely, period, full stop, end of story. And really in this current conversation here, I think all you have to look at is who is actually working to try to preserve and transmit those principles, that rule of law, that way of life, that understanding, that worldview, and who is seeking to do the exact opposite, who is doing the work of the anti-Judeo-Christian civilization folks, the work of our civilizational enemies, of the radical Islamists, of China, Russia, etc. there. And that question, I think, has a pretty easy and straightforward answer.
When it comes to foreign policy, how do you think President Trump is doing with fostering a healthy relationship between the U.S. and Israel?
Oh, I think Donald Trump's been great on this. No doubt about that. I mean, Donald Trump is the most pro-Israel and, frankly, the most pro-Jewish president, arguably, of all time. I mean, at least since Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, right? I mean, Donald Trump has has an unfailingly good, not just good, but amazing track record when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism. His current anti-Semitism envoy, Rabbi Yehuda Kaplan, is fantastic. The administration has been involved in enforcing the law and investigating against all sorts of acts of anti-Semitism, whether they are against synagogues and house of worship, whether they are against anti-Semitic universities. Actually, literally just earlier this week, there was a new lawsuit announced from the DOJ against UCLA for doing an insufficient job of trying to police anti-Semitism on campus there. So they're frankly doing an amazing job when it comes to American Jews. And when it comes to Israel in particular, Donald Trump very, very clearly loves Bibi Netanyahu, very clearly loves the state of Israel. He spoke to the Israeli legislature, to the Knesset, where he was given a hero's welcome there. The Israeli people love him. His approval ratings in Israel, frankly, are just utterly off the charts. And look, Israel currently has one existential enemy. They might get a second. The threat of Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey is very real. But for now, they have one existential enemy, that is Israel, and that is Iran. And Donald Trump also really hates Iran. You heard that in the State of the Union address. He said they are the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism by far. We're not going to let them get a nuclear bomb, period, full stop, end of story. By the way, there are a lot of historical revisionists out there saying that Donald Trump is now talking a lot more hawkish and aggressive than he was in the early days of MAGA America First. Not so. If you go back and listen to his very, very first speech down the Gilded Escalator at Trump Tower in June 2015, literally was in that speech that Donald Trump says we're not going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. So he's had this policy for a very, very long time. He's very earnest. He's very sincere about it there. And I take him at his word there. So his concern for the Iranian regime, his natural affinity and love for both the Jewish people and the Jewish state, I think are pretty much beyond question. The only thing that I will say is I wish that some of these Islamic countries, above all Qatar, had less influence on this administration. I do have concerns about the extent to which the administration is very cozy with Qatar, above all, certain Saudi princes who might be troublesome as well, but it's really Qatar, which is the #1 funder there of the Muslim Brotherhood. I think Qatar is a much more problematic country than I think some of the administration view it as there, and that's my only bit of critical feedback, but otherwise I think that it is very, very, very sound.
And so Tucker Carlson interviews Governor Mike Huckabee, former Governor Mike Huckabee, now Ambassador Huckabee, and he interviews Ted Cruz. Okay, he grills both of them endlessly. He grills them both, but he interviews Nicholas Fuentes, and it's a softball interview. Why?
He hates America. He hates Israel. He hates Jews. He hates Christian Zionists. He literally said he did. I mean, he told Nick Fuentes that he hates Christian Zionists more than anyone, period. So if you love America's enemies and you hate America, if you love Islamic dictatorships and you hate the enemy of those Islamic dictatorships, which in the region means you hate Israel, then you're going to act as such there. Again, I think the key to understanding this problem is just to actually just take in the information, to actually listen and watch what they are saying there. It's not that complicated. You know, Tucker in particular has a lot of vestigial, a lot of vestigial legitimacy from his years and years of being a prolific commentator. Look, I'm a former guest on Tucker Carlson's Fox News show. Okay, I met him for the first time many, many years ago. We've had any number of pleasant exchanges there. I really wish that he didn't lose his darn mind, but he's clearly lost his darn mind. And at that point, we can kind of quibble why he's done that there. Is he being bought out? Is it this? Is it that? It's kind of besides the point. I don't really necessarily even care to play that game because I can just look at what I see and call it like I see it, which is at this point, he is not just the most dangerous anti-Semite in American history. I think that Tucker Carlson is actually the single most dangerous person in the United States today. I really do think that. Because I think that his foremost goal is to tear down, as I've said, the American right. And I believe that the American right is the only force capable of saving the United States. The American left is not capable. The American left also wants to destroy the United States. So the right is the only chance to destroy the United States. But how can a version of the right that is currently doing the dirty work, that is currently being a useful idiot for America's enemies, how can that version of a quote-unquote right save America? It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever there. So if you love America, and you think that America is the only country that can actually save Western civilization, then you want America to be saved. And in order for America to be saved, the American right must be saved. In order for the American right to be safe, the American right has to love America and her allies and stand with America and her allies there. So that is why I am sounding the alarm as hard as I have on Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and other actors.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard from the legendary Josh Hammer. Josh, thank you so much for joining my show. I'm going to have you back on to talk even further. I appreciate the work that you're doing. How can people support you and follow you?
Yeah, I look forward to it very much. Thank you. So my show, The Josh Hammer Show, is available everywhere podcasts are available. Watch it on YouTube or over at the Salem News Channel. I write a weekly syndicated column available at a lot of places, Newsweek, Real Clear Politics, Los Angeles Times, and elsewhere. I'm also senior counsel at the Article 3 Project, and my book is Israel and Civilization, The Fate of the Jewish Nation and the Destiny of the West.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you for joining the show.
God bless you, John.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard from Josh Hammer. You heard from Josh Hammer. He had some wonderful takes as relates to what's going on in our nation. His response on the State of the Union was excellent. It was phenomenal. He hit the ball out of the park. I believe that President Donald J. Trump did a splendid job in embodying the work that he has done during his second term, which, you know, I can go on and on about that and what I thought about 2020, but I'm not going to. But President Trump campaigned on improving America economically, and he campaigned on doing something about the problem at the border. He's doing that. And he's being fault because in the midst of addressing, you know, issues all around the country, in particular in Minneapolis, they uncovered fraud. And so now there are people who are trying to create distractions, and more distractions. Be mindful of that, right? You got to have discernment. Hear me. Spend some time in your Bible. Shut off the podcast, shut off your phone, and read your Bible. Know what the Lord is saying. The word of God is more current than tomorrow's newspaper, and it would behoove you to find yourself in it. Our identity comes from God and not from this culture. Do me a big favor, my friends. I need you to go and like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Set your notification so you know when I go live. And I need you to continue to disturb the peace. Whatsoever you do, my friends, be sure to disturb the peace. God bless you and God bless America.